Welcome to the GLAMMONS MOOC. The GLAMMONS project is a European collaboration dedicated to reimagining galleries, libraries, archives, and museums as commons-oriented institutions. This course explores how GLAM institutions can operate as cultural commons. We'll examine how these institutions are transforming from traditional, hierarchical models to inclusive, participatory platforms of shared cultural stewardship. Welcome to this module on policies that enable commoning practices in GLAMs. We begin by defining GLAMMONs, galleries, libraries, archives, and museums that operate as commons-oriented institutions. Unlike traditional top-down models, GLAMMONs are built on bottom-up processes in which communities come together to steward both tangible and intangible cultural resources. They embrace horizontal governance, inviting volunteers, local residents, artists, and users to participate in decision-making and creative activities. In doing so, they shift authority away from experts and gatekeepers and toward a collective model of care, co-creation, and shared cultural stewardship. A defining feature of GLAMMONs is their choice of legal form. Most operate as cooperatives, associations, foundations, social enterprises, or non-profit entities, structures that embed one-member, one-vote decision-making and reinvest surplus into community benefit. These legal identities ensure that cultural outputs remain accessible, non-commodified, and under community control. Examples include neighborhood libraries governed by associations, community-based museums run as cooperatives, and grassroots oral history archives with informal but democratic networks. Such frameworks create the necessary legal backbone for commons practices to flourish. Governance in GLAMMONs is intentionally inclusive and horizontal. Rather than a narrow board of experts, they may convene general assemblies, extended boards, or open committees that include workers, volunteers, local artists, and residents. Equally important is the concept of communal volunteer labor. This term distinguishes itself from conventional volunteering because volunteers are not mere service providers, they have a stake in governance, planning, and strategic goal setting. By embedding volunteers in decision-making, GLAMMONs cultivate deep relationships of trust, build collective capacities, and sustain their operations through shared commitment rather than through purely waged or contracted labor. Although GLAMMONs tend to be small in scale, averaging one full-time equivalent of communal volunteer labor and annual incomes of around €140,000, they generate bigger social and cultural impacts. They often report up to 50,000 visitors per year, despite 20% of them operating with no formal income streams. By offering free or low-cost access, concessions for underprivileged groups, and community-driven programming, they bring to the fore neglected histories, address social traumas, and foster cultural inclusion. Their sites become public commons where co-curation, thematic exhibitions, and participatory events strengthen community bonds and broaden representation in cultural dialogue. Despite these strengths, GLAMMONs are largely invisible in national statistical databases and mainstream policy frameworks. Our 2023 survey of 270 GLAM institutions across Europe found that only 15% meet the criteria for GLAMMONs, namely, common ownership and horizontal governance. Yet their contributions to cultural democracy, local identity, and social cohesion qualify them as vital social infrastructure. Without targeted policies, these initiatives face instability, reliance on precarious funding, and the risk of privatization. Recognizing GLAMMONs in cultural policy is therefore essential to safeguarding their sustainability and expanding their reach. A place-based policy approach aligns completely with the nature of GLAMMONs. Rather than adopting spatially blind models that favor large urban centers or sectoral categories, place-based frameworks activate local resources and reclaim underused spaces, from abandoned buildings to community halls. They draw on endogenous potentials such as volunteer networks, local histories, and material assets. Inspired by the Barca report and embedded in EU initiatives like the Urban Agenda for the EU and the New European Bauhaus, place-based policies tailor interventions to the unique needs, identities, and capacities of each locale, enabling GLAMMONs to thrive where they are rooted. GLAMMONs operate within hybrid and informal economies that mainstream, capital-centered metrics often overlook. Through communal volunteer labor, reciprocal exchanges, and pooled resources, they demonstrate an economic logic founded on care and cooperation. The diverse community economies framework validates these practices by recognizing unpaid work, non-monetary exchanges, and the ethics of locality, respecting difference, contingency, and the potential for different ways of living and working. Incorporating diverse community economies principles into cultural policy helps to build more inclusive, resilient ecosystems that valorize social relations as much as financial returns. The first policy level is acknowledgement, legitimizing GLAMMONS as valuable cultural entities. Key actions include creating an EU Cultural Commons Charter, a high-level instrument to recognize and protect community-run GLAMs. Introducing a new legal category for community or commons-governed cultural institutions, granting them the rights of social enterprises, including trading, fundraising, and alternative exchange mechanisms. Establishing community land trusts to acquire and steward cultural assets, buildings, archives, collections, for long-term community use. And transferring public assets to community trusts or cooperatives, preventing privatization and embedding commons governance in heritage management. The second level focuses on enabling GLAMMONS to grow while maintaining autonomy and horizontal governance. Proposed measures include multi-year operational funding through Creative Europe Culture Strand and the European Social Fund Plus, reducing dependency on short-term grants. EU-wide crowdfunding mechanisms, potentially through InvestEU, to match citizen contributions for culture, fostering participatory investment. Social enterprise incubators and a participatory governance toolkit, inspired by platforms like Decidem Barcelona, to support digital innovation and co-curation practices. Erasmus Plus training programs on digital skills, dynamic collection curation, and community engagement. And municipal participatory budgeting, enabling communities to directly allocate local public funding to GLAMMONS projects. The third level emphasizes engagement with the broader socio-economic environment, launching an EU Solidarity Economy Fund dedicated to cooperative cultural projects, embedding diverse community economies principles in funding criteria. Facilitating regional entrepreneurial discovery processes that bring GLAMMONS together with local businesses, social enterprises, and tourism actors to identify joint opportunities. Grant programs for initiatives, aligned with diverse community economies, such as artist cooperatives and community creative hubs that combine cultural heritage with local economic activities. Formalizing cultural commons zones, geographic areas where heritage sites, artisanal markets, and cultural events intertwine to build local wealth. Supporting intermediary organizations, like loan funds and mutual aid networks, that provide recoverable grants, loans, and guarantees for culture-based commons. In conclusion, GLAMMONS offer a compelling alternative vision for cultural institutions, grounded in inclusion, care, and community empowerment. By integrating place-based approaches, diverse community economy thinking, and commons-oriented frameworks, cultural policy can become a catalyst for social justice, ecological sustainability, and resilient communities across Europe. The proposed policies, from EU charters to solidarity funds, chart a path for nurturing democratic, locally rooted cultural ecosystems. As we move forward, embracing the GLAMMONS model can empower citizens, strengthen cultural democracy, and foster a truly bottom-up commons for generations to come. Thank you for joining us in this course on cultural commons and the future of GLAMs. Learn more exploring our other resources like the GLAMMONS podcast and visit our website. You can also follow us on our social media channels for the project updates, case studies, and opportunities to engage.